Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It's been a while since I've been live, and as with all things and self care, I do have to take a break sometimes. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Maisha, founder of the Mind ReMapping Academy. And, I was thinking because I been in this conversation of belief change. In fact, just yesterday, I was at the National Medical Association conference in in a group dialogue in the ophthalmology section, and we talked about the state of the well-being of us as physicians. And one of the things that I talked about is some of the shared beliefs that have been installed um, in us as doctors, and not just doctors. I mean, when I think about the healthcare profession, this actually applies to, uh, you know, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, pharmacists. There is sort of there's the curriculum that you learn, that's the external, and then there's the unspoken curriculum that we learn. And so a lot of that is messaging that if we accept that messaging, that becomes belief patterns. And so in the um, the dialogue on the panel, one of the things we talked about, excuse me, was belief change. And as we got into belief change, there's the conversation of up comes the conversation of, well, how quickly can you change a belief? Because, well, when we think about what we believe, some beliefs are beliefs that we've had for a very long time, and then there are some beliefs that are new beliefs. And the truth is, you can shift your belief quickly, or you can shift it slowly. And the difference between the two is simply resistance. Now, what does that resistance represent? It could represent many things, but oftentimes it represents all of the little beliefs that happen in between um, your what you want to believe and what you actually believe, right? So, as an example, a lot of who I speak with, I talk to, I coach are people who are wanting to start businesses or transition their careers. Like that's a big topic these days. I think in all across industries, and not just in the healthcare industry, not just in the medical industry or among doctors, but among a lot of different industries, people are beginning to want to start their own businesses, whether it be, a sort of a side gig or a passion project, because I think people are searching for meaning in what they do on a day to day basis. Now, that's a whole other conversation because you can wait for and look for meaning outside of where you currently are, or you can discover meaning right where you are. And that is something that we could have an entire dialogue or a conversation here about. So, in terms of belief change, and you all know, if you follow me, if you listen to the podcast, if you have listened to me speak before on these lives, if you've listened to me live in person, you know a lot of what I talk about is our belief systems and our beliefs, and our sort of this collection around values, right? The beliefs collect around our values, our deeper core values. And when you're thinking about belief change, a lot of times there are you have your core value, and then you have all the beliefs that surround that value. But then you have sort of the chain of belief. If you could think of like a tree, and that tree has its roots, which would be the values, and then you have the trunk that comes up, off the roots, and you might have a big value that is um, sort of an offshoot of several core deep values, and then the branches become the beliefs. And then off the big branches, there are little tributary branches. Those are smaller beliefs, and some of those become attitudes. You get the leaves that are around the branches, the small branches, and those are the attitudes that come from the beliefs, right? So the attitudes are our attitudes are collections around beliefs. Our beliefs are collections around our values. So when we think about belief change, and let's take for example the belief that I am not like belief that one is not a good business person, or one can't start a business, right? This is one of the big limiting beliefs, or one doesn't have what it takes, doesn't have enough knowledge, the enoughness. Those are that's one of the big core beliefs that I deal with when I am working one-on-one with people, and even in trainings, people like, how am I going to, and they have all of these little beliefs between what they want to believe, which is that they can successfully, say, start a business, or they can successfully become a leader in their organization if they are in an organization and they're wanting to rise in leadership, or they can be led and trust themselves to be led onto the path for their purpose. There are these types of things, or even that they'll be a good parent. We're talking a lot of career based and professional based, but if we bring it more personal, that they'll be able to have a successful relationship. So that is a major belief. Let's say I can't start a business is the belief, or I can't have what I want in relationships is the belief. Now, you can shatter that belief by going to the root of it. And that's a lot of what we do in the work that I do with mind remapping and neurolinguistic programming, is getting to the core of the beliefs that source all the tributaries, right? But what a lot of people believe about beliefs, and this is part of the resistance, is that you can only change your beliefs slowly and over time, one little belief at a time. Now, that's true. I mean, you can change them slowly and one at a time over time, but the only part is not true. All right? The only part is false, right? Because there are people who, let's take for example, people who quit smoking cold turkey. There are people who quit smoking and they take, months, sometimes years to actually quit smoking. And they will utilize the medications or the patches or the gums um, or the pens to help them to wean down to quit. That is the way that they believe that they can quit smoking, right? That is the way that they believe it is possible to quit smoking for themselves. And that is the way that they do it. And there's nothing wrong with that way. It just takes longer. And sometimes um, inside of that belief, there's a lot more relapse and what we call recycling of stages of behavior. Now, there are people who also quit cold turkey. And those people believe that in an instant they can quit and they can be a non-smoker, and they are a non-smoker. One day they wake up, the next day, one day they wake up and they're smoking, the next day they wake up and they're not, right? So the difference between those two is the belief itself. Now, what I would wonder is, what are all the little beliefs in the person who took 3 or 4 months to stop smoking in between I'm a smoker and I am not a smoker? What are the beliefs between I can't start a business and I want to have a successful business, right? Perhaps it's, well, I've never been a good business person, or I don't know numbers, or I am not experienced enough, or I have had a business before and failed, so I'm a failure. So what are those are beliefs between all the little beliefs, right, that come between I can start a business and I can't start a business. And that those little beliefs are the resistance points. And so what there is to do is to look at get to the core, that big trunk, and also look at how committed are you to going very, very slow or to shattering a belief completely, right? That's another place to stand because in the work that I do, we say that everyone has the resources that they need to succeed, right? There are no unresourceful people. There are simply unresourceful states. So if you actually take that statement and you think about the thing that you feel that you cannot do, and you look at, oh, I want to start a business, but maybe I don't have the experience. And you think about, well, it's not that I'm unresourceful, it's that I haven't accessed the resources yet. What do you do? How does that change your behavior? It causes you to look out for the resource or look for the right resources. Look for the coach, look for the group, look for the education, look for whatever it is that you need to look for to be able to gather the resource, rather than there's, I want to start a business, and then there's all of the reasons, that's the reasons or the resistance between now and I want to start a business, right? And that is a lot of the work of um, why it's important to be mindful of our internal language, of our process of thinking, which is a lot of what neurolinguistic programming is about, is the process of thinking. Because the process of thinking, the process of belief, how you come to a belief, affects the content of the belief. And when you can get to dismantling an ineffective process of thinking and believing and speaking and communicating, when you can get to dismantling ineffective processes of decision making, then you will impact the content of the results or the communication or whatever it is, the action, the behavior that you want to start or stop. And so it, I think that a lot of times when we are thinking about changing behavior or changing beliefs for that matter, we think a lot about the content of the belief. We think so much about, you know, I say we process, but it's not thinking about the process. We process the content. We process the content of our beliefs, of our behaviors, of our communicating, of our decision making. It's the why is a lot of what we are involved in trying to tackle, when really, if you want to start to impact at a higher level, right? So there's the impacting at the level of environment. And if you've heard me talk about this, I'm talking about sort of these logical levels of change and transformation. You can impact at the level of environment just by changing the environment, but that doesn't last very long because you're still you. You can change at the level of behavior. You can change at the level of skill. That's even a higher level when you change at the level of skill. But then you start to get change at the level of values, and then of identity, and then of mission. So when you start to get to those higher levels, you're really getting into process. You're thinking at a higher logical, neurological level. So what is the difference then between um, one who shatters their belief in an instant, one who goes from, I don't have a business, I want to start a business, I don't know if I can start a business, and then just flipping the switch to like, yes, I can. And the person who says, I want to start a business. However, I have all of these little beliefs, but I'm not good enough, but I'm not strong enough, but I'm not smart enough, but I don't have the resources, I don't have the money, I don't have the, all of the little beliefs between I I don't have a business, or I can't start a business, and I can start a business, or I want to start a business and I can't start a business. It is looking at that very first core belief, and how did I come to the decision of I can't? What evidence do I even have of that? And is that evidence really, what do we call, objective evidence? Or is that evidence still subjective based on my own personal experience? And what if that evidence was skewed, right? Just because there's an evidence of a failure in the past, does that mean that I can't do the thing in the future? So when I started most of you know that I'm a physician by training. I had my own practice for 10 years. But the practice that I had for 10 years was actually my second practice. Right? When I came out of residency in 2004, I attempted to start my first practice, not having all the resources that I needed to grow a successful practice. And guess what? That practice failed very, very quickly, within the year, actually. And so, what I learned from that, or what I took from that, rather than I can't start a business, I'm not a good business person. As a matter of fact, what's interesting is that never even crossed my mind. What it was, oh, okay, I know that I can do this. I just didn't know enough to do it the effective, successful way. And so then what I did was I went and looked for a resource that could help me to structure a business plan, to structure a financial plan, to set up the practice, to learn all of the intricacies. I learned even how to do my own payroll taxes, right? I learned all of those things inside of I need to gather more resources to be able to start my practice and run it effectively and successfully, financially successfully. And that's what I did. So it took, well, 2 or 3 years for me to learn all the things that and gather the resources, the internal, because it's internal. The internal resources is the access to you reaching out to the external resources. The internal resources, sometimes it's the knowledge, sometimes it's the belief, and the strategy. And the external resources is what you go out there and get. Like, who do you need? Community? Do you need a financial person? Do you need, now I'm talking about business, but if you are um, thinking about this in terms of relationships, then what are the external resources that you might need? Maybe like, a relationship coach or a therapist, or if you date online, do online dating site. If you want you want to tell people in the community, then tell people in the community you're looking. These are the external resources, but the internal resources is evaluating your own internal self-talk and belief system. Right? If we're talking about relationships, getting yourself to a point where you can attract what it is that you actually want, knowing what it is that you actually want, both in a relationship and a partner. Back to the business. The point I'm making here is that when you begin to get at the process, rather than focusing so much on the content, then you create a portal, an opening to the resources that you need, internal and external, to get the results that you want. All right. So if the belief is I can't, fill in the blank, then, or I am not, fill in the blank, you're not enough of, fill in the blank, or it's never going to happen, blank, fill in the blank, is never going to happen. Sometimes it's not I am, it's out there, never going to happen, or there is no resource for me, or there's something out there that's not available, right? So whatever that is, get to the core of, well, what's the process that you use to get to that belief, and then examine that process and look at what is it? How do you shift that process? What do you need? Who do you need to talk to? What do you need to learn to to tweak that process of thinking? Because here's the thing, you can shift the content in one situation, in one circumstance, in one area of life. However, if you don't get to the source, the process by which you came to that thinking, then that level of thinking is going to occur in other areas of life too. That level of self-doubt, that level of um, you know, negative self-talk, the level of all of that will show up in other areas of life. And it may look different and it may sound different because our brains are so like tricky sometimes. It's smart. Our brains are smart. Our brains are very smart, by the way. Your brain is very smart. You just have to learn how to utilize um, input the parts of your brain that you aren't aware that you can utilize. Right? We underestimate the power of our brains, of our minds, and when we begin to rightly estimate or overestimate or just like really get an understanding of the power that we have in our thinking, in our belief, in our mind, in our speaking, and how our speaking affects our thinking, and how our nonverbal communication affects our thinking, right? Then we will realize so much more of ourselves. And I think as we do that for ourselves, then our interactions with each other will elevate and expand. That's why it's so important to do the personal work. I always say, yes, these systems, there are some problems with our system of healthcare, our system of, some of the corporate system, the systems of the various industries, you name it, our financial systems, our governmental systems. There's some problems, but who runs the systems? People. And when the people start to really do the individual work, then that begins to shift how we interact and commune with each other, communicate with each other. So that is all for today. Hope that you will take away something. I'd love to hear what you take away. Post in the comments. I'll be watching. I'd love to hear what you take away today and what you will apply in at least one area of life. Tell me which area of life is most important to you and tell me where you'll apply it. Okay. Like start to look at the process. And of course, if you want to really start to learn how to get at the processes, learn about the processes, then you want to learn NLP. You want to learn, the mind remapping processes that I teach. You can reach out to me directly by messaging me, or you can go to the website that you see here, Remap Your Mind. Today, if you want to schedule a call, mindremappingacademy.com if you just want to learn more. And of course, you can always, again, like I said, reach out and message me directly or click one of the links in my profiles. Okay. So I look forward to next time, and you all have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Namaste.